Thank you, Ravin. Uh, Ravin, I'll share the screen in a while. Thank you, Ravin. Thank you, Ranjit, for the very warm welcome. I feel I'm a part of the family, not a guest speaker. There was a beautiful story, Ranjit. That triggered another story in my head. This is from King Lear. So on a very dark night, on a cliff, the Earl of Gloucester and King Lear were on the cliff on a very dark night. And King Lear asked the blind Gloucester, he asked him, how do you see the world? And the Earl of Gloucester said, I see the world feelingly. So you spoke about visual. I think it's also important that we see the world feelingly. And what storytelling allows you to do, it actually helps you to look at the world feelingly as well. Thank you for the story, Ranjit. So can you all see my screen? Ranjit, is my screen good? Because I can't see you all. So
yes, we can see your screen as well as you.
So it's a Sunday afternoon in India, Malaysia, Mauritius, where we all should be resting. But it's a working day in Nepal. So some of you may be wondering that it's a Sunday afternoon, probably it's a good time to listen to some stories. But let me tell you, storytelling in business is quite different than storytelling at a bar or at a thing. Storytelling in business is a lot of hard work. But I think before I begin, I think I'd like to just say that I'm a global partner of Anecdote International. And like Ravin says, their killer purpose is to restore humanity to the workplace and also bring in conversations, human conversations to the workplace. So some of the content that I would be sharing would actually be from my principal, and some of it is on my own. Now, I first visited Nepal in December 2004. And since then, I visited so many times that I've actually lost count. But I'll never forget my first visit. And by that time, I'd actually met Ravin at a conference outside Nepal. So we didn't know each other so well, but we knew of each other. So when I reached Kathmandu, I asked Ravin whether we could meet up. And we made an appointment to meet up the next day. And he said, look, Bharat, what are you doing this evening? And I said, I don't have plans as such. So he said, Bharat, then you must go to the Ram Doodle restaurant for dinner. Now, for those who don't know, those who have never been to Kathmandu, Ram Doodle is a very iconic restaurant. And almost everyone who has been to the summit of Everest has had a meal at this restaurant. And there are footprints or autographs of almost 600 mountaineers who have actually been to the summit. So I'm holding one of the footprints in my hand. But anyway, this is the one in Thamel. I know the new one is in Naxal. But I went to the restaurant and I said, look, my name is Bharat, and I was there with my friend Jim. He said, we have a table for you. So I was quite surprised. I mean, they didn't know I was coming, but there was a table waiting for me. And then I said, look, I'm a vegetarian. He said, look, we have prepared a menu for you. And we continued eating and wondering where the news actually came. We were there. And then I was about to settle my bill, and I was told, no, sir, that's also been taken care of. You're a guest of Mr. Ravin Lama. And that was how I was welcomed to Kathmandu. And I'll never forget that. And there was another incident that happened. I think immediately after we finished our dinner, I went for a walk in Thamel because my wife wanted me to buy her a leather jacket. And she had given me a budget, and he said, look, if it's more than this, please don't buy it. So I went to this particular shop, and it was significantly higher than the budget that my wife had given me. And I tried to negotiate, but I could not negotiate much. Then I asked the shop owner, not some other shop owner, but the attendant, and I said, look, is there a place where I could actually get a better rate? He said, why don't you go to the shop across the road? Those people are generous in giving discounts. My boss does not give much discount. And that's when I learned about how important guests are in Nepal, because Nepal is actually where their hearts on their sleeve, and Devo Bhavo Atiti Satkar Nepali Ko Sanskar. I think for my known Nepali friends, I like to say that guests are gods in Nepal, and hospitality is very much a part of their culture. And I've actually experienced it. And I'm sure those who have not been to Nepal would experience the same. So thank you again, Ravin. Preparing for this played up that beautiful memory in my mind. So what I'm going to do for the next 45 minutes is I'm going to talk about why stories matter in business. I'd like to also tell you how business storytelling is different from Hollywood, showing how everyone is a storyteller. And this is very important, why character trumps your credentials. And I'm going to teach you one story pattern, which is a connection story pattern, how you can build rapport very quickly and show your character. Now, Robert McKee said storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. And I'd like to share with you a moment when I actually experienced the power of storytelling. So in 2005, I joined the global laundry team. And the brand is called Dirt is Good, but I'll tell you a bit more about that later. But if you look at how laundry was communicated before 2002 or 2003 would be all about claims. You know, my molecule is better than your molecule. You clean 100 stains, I clean 105 stains. You do washing in 4 minutes, I can clean in about 3.5 minutes. So it was claim and counterclaim. And after a while, it stopped working because it became very generic, because all the laundry brands more or less made similar claims, and the consumers could not attribute which message to which brand. And that's when we thought, you know what, the story that brought us to this success will not take us to the next big success. So we need a better story. And that's when we started speaking to housewives all over the world. And we asked them, what is their biggest worry? And we thought that the biggest worry of a housewife would be a stain on their children's shirt. But that was the last thing in their mind. I think her biggest worry was her child's development. Every parent would worry whether the child will always will develop well, will they grow up well, will they come out into beautiful human beings. And that was the biggest worry with the child had. But then we also found out that there was a lot of pressure on children to grow up. So much so that children were not given freedom to play. They were not given enough freedom to get dirty because they had no time to play, because they were going from one class to another class to another class. If you are a prisoner in a jail, by convention, you are allowed 2 hours of playtime. That means for 2 hours, you are allowed to go out and play, be in the outdoor. Do you know how much time children in the free world have? Children in the free world, on average, have about 1 hour to play. And that's when we came out with a story of Dirt is Good. And our message was, allow children to be children. Don't take away their childhood. And it's important that classroom outside the walls is as important with classroom with walls. Classroom without walls is as important as classroom with walls. And you know how important play is to build your character, to build your personality, and to prepare you for life. And let me share with you one of our very first TVCs that we came out with, and this was in India.
Number 1 is very big. Number 2 is big. देख क्या रे तूने मारा इसको तुझे अब भी देखता हूँ मारता है अभी ये ले और सॉरी बोल और शायरी बोल रहे।
दाग लगने से अगर कुछ अच्छा होता है तो दाग अच्छे हैं ना। सर्फ एक्सेल, दाग अच्छे हैं।
वापस नहीं करना।
Ranjit, did the video come out all right?
Video was perfect.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much, Ravin. And you know what happened when we came out with this campaign? Rather than be an enemy of dirt, we decided to befriend dirt. A lot of good things happened. Number one is the business grew significantly. I think over about 10 years or more, from millions, it became a billion brand. So for about 300 million plus, it became to close to a $4 billion brand. And more importantly, I think a lot of people actually found their purpose in work, which was to help unleash the potential in every child. And the stories that were told to engage, to influence, and to inspire were the one that allowed this campaign to be implemented in more than 74 countries. So the stories help to engage and influence and inspire people internally, but also to inspire people to use our brand. And it's called Surf Excel in South Asia, but in Europe it is called Persil. In Africa it's called Omo. In Southeast Asia it's called Breeze. In Indonesia it's called Rinso. But these are different names, but the story is dirt is good. So that's when I actually experienced the power of storytelling. Now, an insight is an unexpected twist to a better story. So I've just demonstrated to you that what happens when you get a better story, and that leads to a very powerful insight that helps you to connect better with the consumers and to employees internally as well. Now, there are lots of definitions of stories, but for business, Nishi, do you mind muting Nishi? Thank you. You know, there are a lot of definitions for stories, but for the purpose of my session today, or for the purpose of business, this is the definition that Anecdote has sort of put forward. And it says that stories are facts wrapped in context and delivered with emotion. And for you to remember this definition in a form of story, so let me convert this definition into a story. And this is what I tell this to my son. And I'd like you to imagine that you have a cat and your cat's name is Mumu, and Mumu is not well. So you take Mumu to the vet, you show Mumu to the vet, and the vet looks at Mumu and says, don't worry, Mumu would be fine, but you need to feed some pills to Mumu. So what you do, you take those pills, you come home, and you cuddle Mumu, and you put a pill in Mumu's mouth. Mumu finds the pill very bitter, and Mumu quickly spits it out. After a while, you try one more time. By right, you don't get a second chance, but imagine you got a second chance. At this time, what happens is that when Mumu comes, you quickly put the pill in Mumu's mouth and close the mouth, thinking that Mumu is going to swallow it. But you know what happens this time? Mumu starts resisting, and Mumu resists it even further and spits it even further. And then you tell yourself, look, I got to change my attitude towards Mumu. I cannot be forcing these pills on her. And then you remember that Mumu likes peanut butter. So you take a spoon of peanut butter, you put the pill inside, and you give it to Mumu. And you know what happens this time? Mumu not only swallows it, but it licks its paw and asks for more. So, you know, the pill in the story, they are facts, data, KPIs, numbers, targets. The pill is actually the context and the way you deliver it with emotion. So imagine if you have a conversation at the workplace, or it's a COVID sort of a conversation, you are speaking to each other virtually, and then you are imposing those targets, and all your conversation is about, you know, what's happening to business and all that. And if you don't even take consideration that, you know, it is COVID and KPIs during COVID times are not different as KPIs in the office. And if you can show some contact, you can show some emotions, your engagement with your employees would be very different. And there are two parts to storytelling, and I call it this the storytelling spectrum. So there's a big S and the small s. So the big S is the world of Hollywood, is the world of Bollywood, is the world of advertising people like Ranjit, Ravin, Ujaya, Moon. So all these people are very talented. It's also the world of authors, and it's a world of fiction. Steven Spielberg, Hero's Journey, but they are so talented that even the fiction that's produced could probably be reality. So I'm not talking about that. I'm going to focus on the little s. And the little s is the little storytelling. It's about people like you and me. It's about the life we live. It's about the life that other people live. It's about our anecdotes, our examples, our recounts. And those are very powerful stories that can be used in business. So if you look at the surf example, dirt is good example that I just showed you, I think the big S is, of course, the television commercial, and all of you could relate to it. It was called Pedal Walk. But what I shared with you was the story behind the big story. And that's what I meant, little s. But what tends to happen in most organizations is that we actually tend to forget the little s. And these are lost stories at work. And so one of my purposes is actually to make sure that these stories are not forgotten. So Ranjit will, Ranjit will launch a poll shortly. But my question to you at this point in time is, who would say they are a storyteller? And we'll be launching a poll, and all you need to do is answer yes or no. And
okay, the poll is on.
And the poll is on, and don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to tell a story. So if you think you are a storyteller, say yes. And if you are not, you say no.
Okay, I'd like to encourage everybody to participate in the poll just to get a general idea of what this whole thing is about. Okay, I'll end in 30 seconds.
Yeah, just give them another 2 minutes. Okay, you've closed it. All right. So,
okay.
I mean, these results are very good because I think we are in Nepal, the land of storytelling. But normally the results are the other way around. I don't think we need this session, Ravin. They're all storytellers in the room.
Which is very good.
Which is very good. But normally it's the other way around. You can close the poll. Thank you, Ravin. Just make a note, 71% says storytellers, yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ravin. So actually, I'm pleasantly surprised with this. But most people would say that they are not actually storytellers. It will be the other way around. And I just wanted to, Ravin, can you close the poll? I can see it on my screen.
You can still see it?
Okay, I closed it. Thank you. It was on my screen. Thank you so much. So there was a behavioral scientist by the name of Robin Dunbar, and he actually carried out a research with his PhD students. And he asked his PhD students to hang around at places where people were sort of interacting informally and socially. So this could be, you know, coffee shops, mama shops in India, or it could be Starbucks, or also could be office canteens or office messes. And they were asked to eavesdrop to find out like what are people talking about. And later they all went back to their workplaces and they started codifying it. And they found out that 60% of the time, people were talking about someone who did something. So what do you call that? Gossip, right? So here a good definition of gossip. And it says gossip means when you talk about someone and that someone is not part of the conversation. So gossip could be good, gossip could be bad. Depends on whether you are saying good things or bad things. And we are gossiping, then you're actually storytelling. But in this case, you all are already converted storytellers. But I'm not sure whether you are really storytellers, and I think we'll find out shortly whether you are you think you're a storyteller or you're actually a storyteller. But we'll come back to that point. I think next what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you a video. And the video is from a series called West Wing. And there's a particular episode called Galileo 5. And this is quite an important episode because in that episode, the spacecraft has just landed on planet Mars and the President of the United States is about to go live. And this video is about a rehearsal that's happening 2 minutes before he goes live in front of 60,000 American children. But while watching the video, I'd like you to focus on two characters. One is Scott and the other one is Sam. Sam works, Scott, the guy in the jacket, works for NASA Public Affairs. And Sam, the gentleman without the jacket and with glasses, is a script writer for the president. So I'd like you to notice how both Scott and Sam tell their stories. And I'm going to show you the video.
Who wrote this intro?
I did.
You're from NASA Public Affairs?
Yeah.
You mind if I give it a polish?
Is there a problem?
No, it's great. You mind if I change it?
I'd prefer if you didn't.
Just the same.
Public Affairs has cleared the text. If it's going to be changed, I'd prefer if the president changed it.
See, that's kind of what he pays me to do, so.
Look, I don't want to step on your toes. You don't want to step on mine. We're both writers.
Yes, I suppose, if we broaden the definition to those who can spell.
Excuse me?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Sir, this is the crew from NASA Public Affairs.
How you doing?
Sir, we're going to run you through the drill for tomorrow morning. First of all, you'll be flanked on either side by the Flight Operations Manager, David Narakawa, and NASA Chief Administrator, Dr. Peter Jobson. On either side of them will be Dr. Samuel Thurman of the Meteorite Analysis Team from the Johnson Space Center and Dr. Joyce Gray Sutton, Planetary Geologist from Cal State Northridge. On these monitors, you'll be seeing the images beamed back from the surface, and on this computer screen, you'll be able to read the questions being sent in by the kids. I strongly urge you.
Yes.
I strongly urge you.
I know.
I strongly urge you, Mr. President, to act as moderator and pass the questions off to one of the experts on the panel rather than answer it yourself.
Yes.
Would you like to see some of the questions?
We have questions in advance.
Some of them. Would you put them up?
Sure. Katie, 6th grader, Green Oaks, Junior High School, Austin, Texas, asks, how old is the planet Mars? That's a great question, Katie. The planet Mars is 4.6 billion years old.
What did I just say?
I knew that one.
Nobody likes a know-it-all.
Yes, God forbid that while talking to 60,000 public school students, the president should appear smart.
That's fine. Just don't show off.
I don't show off. Stevie, 4th grader, PS31, Manhattan, asks, what is the temperature on Mars? Well, Stevie, if one of our expert panelists were here, they would tell you the average temperature ranges from 15 degrees to minus 140.
That happens to be wrong. It ranges from 60 to minus 225.
I converted it to Celsius in my head.
Thank you.
Can I see the intro?
It's up on the prompter.
Ah, good morning. I'm speaking to you live from the West Wing of the White House. Today, we have a very unique opportunity to take part live in an extremely historic event which, whoa, boy.
How you doing, Mr. President?
Who wrote this intro?
I did, sir. I'm Scott Tate from NASA Public Affairs.
Scott, unique means one of a kind. Something can't be very unique, nor can it be extremely historic.
While we're at it, do we have to use the word live twice in the first two sentences like we just cracked the technology?
Look,
we're also broadcasting in living color, right?
Sam,
Yeah.
he's going to make some changes.
You gonna clear him with me?
I doubt it. Write this. Good morning. 11 months ago, a 1,200-pound spacecraft blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. 18 hours ago, is it 18 hours ago? We're on the air at noon Eastern.
Yeah.
18 hours ago, it landed on the planet Mars. You, me, and 60,000 of your fellow students across the country, along with astroscientists and engineers from the Jet Propulsion Lab in Southern California, NASA Houston, and right here at the White House, we're going to be the first to see what it sees and to chronicle the extraordinary voyage of an unmanned ship called Galileo 5.
He said it right.
Right. So remember, Scott is the NASA public affairs person. Sam works for the president. I think in the interest of time, I'll probably not ask you whom do you prefer. Obviously, most of you would actually prefer Sam Seaborn. But this is my question to you. You know, when Sam Seaborn was speaking, I'd like you to write in the, I think, Ravin, can you open up the chat room for them? I'd like you to put in the chat box, how do you describe Sam Seaborn's version? Remember, Sam Seaborn is the president's spokesperson. 11 months ago, 1,200 pounds, 18 hours ago. What is your reaction? How would you describe Sam Seaborn's version? Can you just type 1 or 2 words into the chat window? Take half a minute to do that. Yep, powerful, interesting, informative, personal, inspiring. Sam include, that's very nice. Sam included everybody in the story. Nishan, very nice, detailed. Abhinav says he can recall it better. Mansi says, would make me feel privileged to watch it. So you feel that you are a part of the success story. Am I right? Cool and crafted, says Deepak G says, easier to understand, detailed yet simple, trying to connect, simple and emotionally connected. Kelvin says, very emotional. Very nice. So thank you. Yes, absolutely happening in front of me. Wow, you can actually visualize it. Beautiful. Thank you. Brad Jones says he speaks to individuals, not everyone. Fantastic. So you feel very connected on a one-to-one basis. So so let me thank you for the chat. Now can I ask a similar question about Scott? So when Scott was speaking, how do you describe Scott Pett's version? What was your reaction? Went over my head. Mundane, technical, very direct, general, cold facts. Brad says he had cold facts. Use of insights, discipline. Right. Thank you everybody. Amit says direct, it's like listening to a news. Thank you. So what happened was this particular video is actually shown at every storytelling workshop. So we collect all the feedback and we put it into something called word cloud. And this is what comes out of the word cloud. So when Scott speaks, these are the kind of words that come out: technical, robotic, cold, dry, boring, blah, 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 very informal, very formal, impersonal, engaging. And when Sam speaks, it's all about imagination, impactful. Some of the words which you actually told me, it's engaging, imagery, inspiring, inclusive, passionate, and so on and so forth. Now, who do you think had more facts, Scott or Sam? In the chat room, if you just need to answer one. My question to you is, who do you think had more facts? So if it's Scott, you say type Scott. If you think Sam had more facts, then you can say Sam. So Scott, Sam, Scott. So Brad, do you mind if I put you in a spot and if I can sort of ask you, what facts do you remember from Scott? You can unmute yourself, and I'm sorry to ask you, but do you mind, Brad?
Oh, no. My camera's not turning on here, but
no, that doesn't matter. I can hear you loud and clear.
I felt like the facts that were coming out of Scott were not really the kind of facts that we needed. Like they were, it was live, right? They're just like sort of small facts, right? And Sam was painting more of a picture.
But Scott, yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Brad. But there were no facts, right? There were just abstract words. Facts are numbers, data. Scott did not have any of that. But most of you said, Scott, you know why? Because I introduced Scott as a NASA public affairs. So all of you assume that Scott had all the facts. But Scott was speaking in absolutely abstract terms. You know who had all the facts? Sam. 11 months ago, 1,200 pounds. 18 hours ago, 60,000 children, you, me, and I. But you know what he did? Stories are facts, wrapped in context, delivered with emotion. So, when we speak, we have a choice. And the choice is either we express a statement, we make a lot of assertions, or we give a lot of opinions. And the other choice we have is to make a statement, but quickly share moments. So, those of you who came early, I asked you a question like, could you share one good thing that came out of COVID? And I was so happy that most of you actually shared moments. Like I remember, Michael, I could imagine, I could actually visualize Michael in the prayer service along with his family virtually. And similarly, I could actually feel the emotions which Ranjit would have felt when his colleagues at the office decided to solve the problem among themselves rather than Ranjit going to do it. So I think I was very pleased, and I said, look, I'm at the right place because you guys are storytellers. And when you share about moments, that means you tell stories. Now, the difference between the two is when you make statements, the impact is very little. And most of you said that, when Scott spoke, you remembered very little. But when you share stories, the impact is very high because a story describes what happened. A good story makes you see what happened, and a great story makes you feel what happened. So those who tell stories help us visualize it and help us feel it. Now, in terms of frequency, most people like to make statements. They like to make assertions, like they used to make a lot of opinions. But what happens when you do that is that the frequency of doing it is very high, but the impact is very little. But very few people tell stories. But most leaders who tell stories, the impact of storytelling is very high. So that's the power of a storytelling, which I've just demonstrated. Now, there are many reasons to use stories, but I'll tell you three reasons to use stories. One is scientific, the second one is human, and the third one is attention. So scientific reason means basically, when you tell stories, two hormones get activated in your mind. One is, I always forget. Wow, the first one is oxytocin. So oxytocin is actually called a love hormone or a cuddle hormone. So when you tell stories, or if you feel like social bonding, the cuddle or the love hormone gets activated. And the other hormone that's actually get activated is cortisol. And when cortisol happens, cortisol is actually a stress kind of a hormone. So it actually tells you to flee or to stay. But when you tell stories, it asks you to stay. And the other good thing that's happened is that when you tell stories, a lot of brain cells get activated and memory cells actually fill up your mind. So that's the scientific reason. The second reason is a human reason. And next, I'm actually going to show you a video. It's a very old black and white video. The original video is about for 2.5 minutes. This one runs for about 70 seconds. And what I like you to do is that I like you to look at the video and tell me what's happening. So very quickly in the chat window, could you just write a few words that describes what was happening there for you? So what is the story that was played up in your mind while watching the video? Thank you, Brad, for the link. Yeah, lovers trying to escape, love story, fighting to a circle, family drama, love triangle, Dr. Khairi. Well played, all about politics. Come on, what else? What else? Love triangle, yeah, Brad. Struggle to fit in, wow, Benita. Fitness for survival. Right, thank you very much. I think we can go on and on, but unknowingly, you all were part of an experiment. So the first experiment was carried out in 1944 by two American psychologists. That was Hyder and Simmel. So this is called Hyder and Simmel study. So in the first study, there were 34 participants. This was the year 1944. And of the 34 participants, 31 of them interpreted this as a story of a love affair gone wrong, domestic violence, office politics, incest, bullying, and so on and so forth. And the answers tend to be similar every time this question is asked. So 31 of them saw it as that. 2 people saw it as a story of animals, birds and bees, and another sort of animal story. And only 1 person actually saw it as geometry shapes going in and out. And that's exactly what it was. This was an abstract video, and it was just geometry shapes going in and out. But you know what happens to the human mind? As a human beings, we always need to ascribe a meaning to what we see, even though what we see makes no sense. And that's how the human mind works. So every time we get exposed to something, and if the story is not told to us properly, we complete it. So take, for example, a CEO comes to the floor where he normally does not come to. And then you wonder why the CEO is has come to the floor. And somebody says, look, there's an AGM coming up. So probably the CEO wants to speak to the person at public affairs to pick up the speech. So people are happy with the story and they continue working. And then somebody brings in a new information. They say, hey, don't you know that there was a fire that just happened at one of our plants? So they replace that with another story. So this is what happens to a human nature. And similar things happen at the office. So when you don't speak with clarity, there'll be a lot of confusion and people will make up their own stories, and there'll be a lot of gossip that's happening. So similarly, that video which I showed you was a very abstract video. But you know what you all did? You actually made it something concrete and you converted into a real story. So that's my first, this is the downside of not speaking with clarity. So that's the second part. That's the human reason, because human reason, we are all wired for emotions. We are wired to remember pictures, and we just can't leave things that empty. And of course, the third reason is attention. I think we're all living in an attention deficit world. It is estimated that by 2020, there could be 4 times more digital data than all the grains of sand on Earth. Every day, we are exposed to 500 million tweets, 23 billion texts, 300 billion emails. So do we want more data? Do we want more information? No. You know what? We are all drowning in data. We are all drowning in information, but we are starving for knowledge and wisdom. And storytelling helps you make sense of all the data that we are drowning in. So those are the 3 reasons, but there are many more reasons, but the scientific reason, the human reason, and the attention reason. Now, very quickly, I think I've been talking about storytelling, but I think it's important for you to know what is story and what is not a story. And most people say that they're actually telling stories, but they're actually talking, they're not telling stories. So I want to tell you what are the elements that are in a story. So if you pick up the elements, then you know there's a story coming. But this does not guarantee a good story or a great story, but you know at least it's a story. So a story should have a time marker and a place marker. So if you look at the Haider-Simmel study, I said the time was 1940, the year was 1944. My first visit to Kathmandu was December 2004. The place was Ramdoodle in Tamil. So you can actually start visualizing it. So it's very important that if somebody's giving a time marker or a place marker, chances are there's a story coming up. Then a story must have a sequence of events. So if you look at the Galileo story, the sequence of events was 11 months ago, 18 hours ago, and 50,000 American school children. So that's the sequence of events. Then a story must have a character. They should have some real people. And if possible, please name the person who is in your story and try to bring in a conversation. So again, I think in my storytelling, I brought the two characters, which are Sam Seaborn and Scott Pitt. And when I narrated the incident, I spoke about my conversation with Ravin and the attendant at the shop where I wanted to buy my leather jacket and the conversation I had with him. So that makes your story credible. Now, it's important that when somebody is listening to you, there should be something unexpected or unanticipated. And that should be some element of, there should be an aha moment. So when I introduced myself about my first visit to Nepal, there were two aha moments. One aha moment was, there were a lot of aha moments, but the big one was the meal was all arranged and paid for. And when I went to buy the leather jacket, the attendant tells me, look, there's a better place where you get a good price. And more importantly, what is the point you are trying to make? And again, I think when I shared the dirt is good story, I would say the point I was trying to make is when you have a good story, I think it's good for business and the brand sort of grows. And when I shared my Nepal moment was about how guests are treated in Nepal. So it's very important that when you tell a story in the office, you must have a point. So just remember this, and you may want to take a photograph of this. I'll leave this for about a few seconds so that you could do it. So this is very important. I call it the storytelling structure or the story spotting structure. And later I'll also issue one PDF that will, I'll ask Ravin and Ranjit to sort of share with you. So always remember that a story must have a time marker, place marker, sequence of events, characters, dialogue, and aha moment. And most important is a story must have a point. Now, there are lots of storytelling patterns, but let me start with a basic story pattern, a relevant statement, a story, and a point. And that's what all of you did beautifully. You know, the relevant statement is good things came out of COVID. Then you tell a story, and the point you made is I've become a bit more spiritual. Or my eyes and my heart have opened up to my colleagues. And I think you all use this pattern beautifully, so salute. But I'm going to nevertheless show an example, and this is an example of Jack Ma being interviewed by Barack Obama. And he actually uses the same pattern. He makes a relevant statement, tells a story, and makes a point. So here it goes.
Climate change. I want to get a sense from you why you think it's so important.
Well, it's not the passion, it's the concern and worry. When I was 12 years old, I went to swim in a lake. And I was almost dying in that lake because the water was too deep, much deeper than I thought. But 5 years ago, I went that lake again. The total lake was dry. A lot of people have a disease. And the second concern of the young colleagues died of cancer. 20 years ago, very few people have heard about the cancer, the word. But now, almost most of the families, my friends, they have people have cancers.
So very straightforward, right?
I know you've been.
It's not my passion, it's my concern. 20 years ago, I went to swim in the lake and I almost drowned. 20 years later, there was no water. 20 years ago, nobody knew about cancer. Today, a lot of my friends are dying of cancer. And the point he was trying to make is, let's do something about it. Now, so that's a normal kind of a pattern. So every time you are asked to say something, use that pattern, make a statement, tell your story, a relevant statement, story, and point. Now, this is one of the very important storytelling patterns, which is how do you build rapport and connection. And in business, you must remember that people buy people first, people buy company first, and only then they buy your product, your brand, or services. And people are generally, genuinely interested in people. People don't care what you know. People want to know whether you care or not. Only after they find out that you care, only then they want to know what you know. And you know, there's a beautiful saying by Dr. Goldsmith, and he said that leaders are admired for their skills, but loved for their compassion. And there are two parts to building rapport, and I call it the connection story pattern. So every time you speak in a sort of a business contact and you need to establish a rapport or you need to establish a connection with your business partner, you tell a listener a story about what makes you tick and show them you are like them. Because people like people who are like themselves. And if you noticed, most TED Talks, most of the speakers would actually start with a connection story. They will reveal a bit about themselves. They'll reveal a bit about their vulnerability, their imperfections. And then you feel connected to them because you see a part of yourself in what the speaker is saying. And then the speaker goes on to share his or her expertise. And this is a very common thing, but we forget. So in my workshops, what I do is that I elicit a lot of connection stories and I help people say it. But I think in the interest of time, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a video where Indra Nooyi, the former chairperson of PepsiCo, gets interviewed. But before that, I want to say that it's the character that trumps your credentials. This chart was done before Donald Trump actually became the president. But the point I'm trying to make is people are more interested in knowing more about you, about your character, rather than your credentials. Because to find out about the credentials, they can check so many ways to find out about your background. But they actually want to know what kind of a person you are. As human beings, we are interested in human beings. And again, I would say people are influenced by people who are like themselves. So I'd like you now to watch how Indra Nooyi shows a character.
So, Indra, you run a company with 300,000 employees, almost $70 billion in revenues. You come home one day as president of the company, just appointed, and your mom's not that impressed. Will you tell that story?
You know, this was about 14 years ago, and I was working in the office. I worked very late, and we were in the middle of the Quaker Oats integration, or the acquisition. And I got a call at about 9:30 in the night from the existing chairman and CEO at that time, and said to me that, Indra, we're going to announce you as president and put you on the board of directors of PepsiCo. I mean, I was overwhelmed because, you know, look at my background, where I came from. To be president of an iconic American company and to be on the board of directors, I mean, I thought it was just something special had happened to me. So rather than stay and work till midnight, which I really would have done because I had so much work to do, I decided to go home and share the good news with my family. So I got home at about 10, parked the car, got into the garage, and my mother was waiting at the top of the stairs. And I said to her, Mom, I got great news for you. And she said, well, then let the news wait. Can you go out and get some milk? I said to Mom, look, I looked in the garage. Looks like my husband is home. What time did he get home? She said, 8 o'clock. I said, why didn't you ask him to buy the milk? Because he's tired. Okay, he's tired. He's tired. We have a couple of help at home. Why didn't you ask them to get the milk? She said, because I forgot. I said, okay, fine. She said, just go get the milk. We need it for the morning. So I, like a dutiful daughter, I went out and got the milk and came back. I sort of banged it on the counter and I said, I had great news for you. I've just been told that I'm going to be president and on the board of directors, and all that you want me to do is to go out and get the milk. What kind of a mom are you? And she said to me, let me explain something to you. You might be president of PepsiCo, you might be on the board of directors, but when you enter this house, you're the wife, you're the daughter, you're the daughter-in-law, you're the mother, you're all of that. Nobody else can take that place. So leave that damn crown in the garage and don't bring it into the house. Now, I have to tell you, David, I've never seen that crown. I've never seen it. Between my husband and my kids, they've hidden it. So I haven't seen it ever.
Beautiful, isn't it? How many CEOs can speak like that? And this is a master class in storytelling. But it could be shortened a bit to about 90 seconds. But this is what a connection story is. In that 2 minutes, she actually revealed a lot about herself, what makes her tick, and she also revealed a bit about herself that helps you connect. And I'm sure most women or ladies who are in this talk can actually relate to what she said. So I'm going to close in about 5 minutes. So there are many story patterns. So what I think the interest of time, I've just showed you the connection story pattern. But there's also a clarity story pattern that allows you to communicate strategy, values, decisions that are being made, change in policies. Because if you don't have stories, it will not be remembered. 90% of the time, people actually don't remember the strategies of their company because they are not shared with clarity. They have to refer to some notes, but they'll not be able to articulate it. Influence stories that how do you overcome objection? Because everybody's got a story in their head. So how do you replace a story with a better story? And of course, there are a lot of success stories as well, which are very powerful in business. And overriding this is how do you spot a story? And I actually showed you the story spotting framework. So if I can just end by giving you a few tips, I think my first tip is avoid using the S word. So in business, you tell a story without telling a story. That means the stories are invisible. You just share an experience, and people, chances are it will gel better, because the minute you tell you're going to tell a story, people will start filtering it, and because stories in business have a slightly different connotation. So avoid using the S word in business. Just share an experience or share a moment. Favor your stories. Favor your stories means make your stories your own. Share your own stories, because nobody can take that away from you. But you can also share stories from other sources, but please reveal the source that you are mentioning. But your stories are the best. And particularly in business, you don't actually need to use the storytelling voice. I think you got to be authentic. You got to be your natural best. And your passion will actually show in your voice. It's very important you know your point. Most of us forget the point you are making. So that's why it could be interpreted differently. And always remember the story about the black and white geometry shapes, because if you don't make your point very clearly, if you leave it a bit abstract, people will interpret it differently. Always keep them fresh. As a business leader, you actually need a story bank, and every now and then you can actually draw from your story bank. It's very important, practice, practice, and practice, because storytelling in business is a lot of hard work, because we're dealing with facts, numbers, and we must wrap it in context and deliver it with emotion. So always practice your stories. Keep them short, because by right, a connection story should take about 90 seconds. And the other stories could take about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes. So again, only with practice, you can actually shorten it. And please don't write it out in full, because business storytelling is all about oral storytelling. And I always tell people that in business, you speak to express and not to impress. If you falter, just alter. So story on Dhanyavad, and that's me. So over to you, Ranjit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bharat, for taking us through. I know that we had a little shorter time than required, so you have rushed us through it, but I'm sure it was quite insightful. We got a lot of cues for storytelling, basically for business storytelling. I'm sure a lot of us participants have gained so much of wisdom on that. Now we will have quick Q&A session. You can type your question on the chat room, and accordingly I'll pick up your question for Bharat. So I'm going to pick 5 questions from all of you, and I'm going to randomly pick those 5 questions. So please share your question or ask question to Bharat. He is ready to answer your queries. So please go ahead and send us question in the chat box. So the first question that I received, Bharat, is from Khalil. He's asking when it is not appropriate to tell stories, when you should not tell the story.
That's a very good question, Dr. Kharir. So it depends on the question. If the question is a straightforward yes or no, or it's a straightforward fact, if somebody said, have you had lunch? Then you just say yes or no. So don't tell a story about lunch. That is one. The second time you should not tell a story is when the person is in a bad mood. Because in a storytelling, you must be able to have a conversation. If somebody is rushing and don't have a time, you should not tell a story. The third one is if you have already told too many stories, then you should not be telling any more stories. And the fourth point is sometimes you should be listening rather than telling stories. There are many other reasons, but these are the four thoughts that come to my mind when you should not be telling a story.
Thank you, Bharat. There is one more question from Mansi Agrawal. What should one keep in mind when making a story for a brand?
Mansi, that's a good question. I think I need to do a separate masterclass on branding. But I think one hint that can give you is the story should be rooted in human truth. Because if a brand story is rooted in human truth, chances are it will connect better. So if you look at the Dirt is Good story, the human truth is the worry of the children that parents are most worried about. And the brand actually connects the worry to the brand. So actually we give more importance to a human life truth. And that's what most brands do. They actually take a life moment and they recognize it and they don't try to change that behavior. They accept it and see what role the brand can play to solve a human tension. I hope that helps.
Great, thank you. And there is one question from Deepak Raj Joshi. In the age of infodemic, overloaded with the data and information, how to make a story short, effective, and impactful?
In fact, that's exactly Deepak ji, what storytelling is all about. So I think the first thing is you must know what is the point you are trying to make. So that's tip number one. And then you follow the storytelling framework. So if you follow the storytelling framework, which I told you about the time marker, place marker, and so on and so forth, it helps you to deal it. You see, the problem with us is we got too much of information, and most of the time we are telling people everything we know. But in storytelling, we should only tell things that we think people should know. And that's where, and please don't get a wrong impression through my session that storytelling is a shortcut. Storytelling is easy. I like to tell my friends storytelling is a lot of hard work and probably it takes more time. But you know what? You get things done.
Great.
That's how storytelling helps.
So one question from Raz, which I had not picked because I thought that this was answered in the beginning itself in the session. Still, I'm repeating this question. Where do we actually apply these stories?
Applied everywhere. I think storytelling should become a part of your second nature, but that does not mean that you only tell stories. I mean, take for example, say you're applying for a bank loan and you are an entrepreneur. So you may give a huge business case about all the facts and data and all that, but if you can show a bit about your character, show a bit about how passionate you are, chances are the bank manager would be interested in looking at your case. So it could be like, if you're an entrepreneur, you could probably share a moment saying, look, you know what, when I was in school, my parents didn't have much money. And even at school, I had to find ways to make money. And I used to actually sell comic books. And I started earning money to help my family. Chances are the bank manager would be interested knowing that, wow, this guy is passionate. But don't make up your stories, right? In business, you got to be very authentic. And if you make up your stories, you'll get caught. But storytelling works everywhere and across all industries.
Thank you, Bharat. You have answered the Palomi's question, which was Indra Nui was very honest in our story. It's obviously great to always be honest, but is it okay to sometimes tweak your stories or stick to honesty even if it's not all good things?
I don't know one should tweak a story, but one should focus on what part of your story that you want to share. Now, the thing with Indra Nuyi's story is there were a lot of details which were probably not needed. So she would have probably focused more on that conversation she had with her mother or some of the things that would have made us thing stronger. So what I'm saying that one should not tweak the story, but depends on the point you are making, you know, which part of the story you want to give your focus into. So that's the trick, Palomi. I think know your point and find elements that will actually make your point stronger, and cut out the things that are not that does not add to your point. I hope I answered that question, Palomi.
We have one more question. How do we strengthen our story bank and recall it in details every time at right moment? How do we do that?
Fantastic question, Sagar. So there are different systems to build up your story bank. Number one is, of course, a notebook. But today with technology, you know, you got OneNote, you got Evernote, and every time you pick up a story, you immediately write it down in your story bank. And on a daily basis, at least you must have 2 or 3 stories. And how do you do it? Give it appropriate hashtags. Don't write it out in full. So in my case, December 2004, Nepal first visit, Ramdoodle, buying jacket in Tamil. That's it. And if I want to put a title to it, is hospitality. So if I want a hospitality story, that's how it would be. But that's a fantastic question, Sagar. If you have a story bank, it will always help hold you in good stead. And please, please, please don't trust your memory. Put it down, because many a times I think Ranjit will agree with me that you sort of regret, I wish I told that story. Now the Vivekanand story came very easily to him. King Lear story came easy to me because it's all in my story bank. That's why we can actually take. And Ravin has also got a huge story bank. Thank you, Sagar. Good question.
So we have completed all the questions that were sent by our participants. There is one more question that is from Amit Giri. How are leadership stories different from the stories in and around movies and campfires?
Amit, I'll actually say how are leadership stories and campfire stories similar? Because when you even listen to stories at campfire, it inspires you. Now, I think the principles are very simple. Number one, I would say that you speak to express and not to impress. Second one is be comfortable with your imperfection. It's okay to be vulnerable. And that's what stories is. And remember, when you tell a story, you must know that you're telling a story. So again, I'm emphasizing the point, it must have the story spotting framework. And always remember that a good story helps you visualize. Remember Sam Seaborn, when he was speaking, you could actually visualize that you are personally there. That's what a storyteller does. And the other one is you must feel. A great story must make you feel. And Mansi says, I felt privileged to be a part of that announcement. She was so taken up that she was actually part of the thing. That's what leaders do. And I can tell you one thing, leaders are made, not born. So you practice and I think Ranjit will agree with me as well. I hope you do, Ranjit, especially.
Yes, so we are in Toastmasters, we say leaders are made. That's
absolutely.
The tagline of Toastmasters.
But you need to practice, Amit.
Yes.
And everybody is a leader. So even at home, you're a leader. As long as they got 1 or 2% to listen to you, you're a leader.
One of the things that has worked for me is whenever I get a chance, I keep using that story till the time it gets into my knowledge bank, like it just seeds in. So I keep telling that story. So practicing is one of the key.
Can I answer Nirmal's question? Thank you, Ranjit.
Story, yeah.
Thank you, Ranjit.
Yeah.
Can I answer Nirmal's question? Nirmal
yes.
has a good question.
Nirmal has a very good question. Please go ahead.
So Nirmal's question is, can you share one of the best incident that stories has entirely changed the situation? Good question, Nirmal. And, you know, my purpose is to help. Can I say Nirmal? Can you put the spotlight on Nirmal, Ravin? Nirmal, can you just raise your hand so we can see you? If you can. Okay, doesn't matter. I'll start answering the question till Ravin. There we can see Nirmal. Put the spotlight on him. Put your hand up and Ravin will put you in the spotlight. Very good. So, so Nirmal, what happens is that you know, that moments that matter most to me is when an organization or a person gets impacted through my workshop. So sometime last year, I conducted a storytelling workshop in Vietnam, and I actually coached one of the managers to tell a connection story. Remember, I told you a connection story? Tell something about yourself that makes you relate to that other person, and tell something about that makes you tick. So he used my format, and this is how he introduced himself at a town hall in front of about 400 people. And if I may, Nirmal, I'm going to actually tell you how he actually shared his story. So he says, my name is Wu. I've been working in this company for about 6 years now, but on this particular brand for about 6 months. But I'd like to share with you a childhood memory of mine. And my childhood memory is that of cleaning, because I come from central Vietnam, which is always flooded. So I'm either cleaning my house or I'm cleaning my school. But there is one memory that traumatizes me. And that's the memory of the toilet of my school. The toilet of my school had no roof. The door could not close, very dirty and dark. And I used to avoid going to the toilet. But there were some days that I could not hold on, and I used to run home. But some days I didn't make it on time. And I also have a younger sister. But I want to change that. I want children of Vietnam to have happy memories of their childhood. Therefore, I'm very proud to work as an assistant brand manager of Vim Toilet Cleaner, because from the profit we make, we use a part of the profit to sanitize and renovate toilets of schools in Vietnam. And that's why I come to work every day. And what happened after that was the chairman of Unilever was visiting Vietnam, and the chairman asked Wu, what do you do? And Wu shared the story, and the chairman actually recorded his story on his phone, and that was shared globally and it went viral. So my question to you next time, if somebody were to ask you, what do you do? Try to tell a story. Thank you for asking me that question, and I hope it was useful for the rest as well. Thank you, Nirmal.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. We take it as the last question, and I would like to thank all the participants for patiently listening to Bharat, and I'm sure that this was very insightful. I gained a lot from this session. Thank you very much, Bharat, for putting in that effort and accepting our request, coming on board. So thank you very much from IA Nepal chapter side to you. We will bring you back once again for much detailed, much longer session, because I think this was more of a curtain raiser for storytelling workshop. So we will be looking at a storytelling workshop in coming days. Hopefully we will do that physically when things will move on smoothly. So thank you very much. I would like to now hand over the session to Robin from IA Nepal chapter side. There is a small memento for Bharat Avlani, which will be well kept with me till the time I meet him next. And I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you and namaste. Over to you, Robin.
Thanks so much, Ranjit. I think this is an excellent session. For all of those of you who still have questions to be answered, Bharat will share his email address. Please do write to him. We'll try and get Bharat back to Kathmandu at a more suitable time, as Ranjit mentioned, to actually conduct a masterclass on storytelling, because this is something which will really impact the business we are in, because people relate to stories, people remember stories, and that is what influences mindsets of businesses and individuals. So Bharat, thanks so much for your time here. It was an absolute pleasure. Next time, I think we need to send a reminder, because a lot of people missed out, and because there are so many webinars happening all the time, people need to be reminded.
And
so
one thing that we missed out is that today is Nepal's working day, and it happened to be eclipse, so that way we missed out on some of them.
Yeah, but that's okay. I think we had at least 50 plus participants. So
yes,
which is a good number actually, and it was a good group, a good mix from several countries, which was very international.
But Ravin, you know what? In storytelling, it's about the people you impact that matters, not so much the numbers. In fact, a lot of people get upset that they don't have enough Facebook likes. And to me, what's the point in having 500 likes and not a single person making comment?
True.
So I think that's always go to quality and not
Yeah,
so much
absolutely.
quantity. And you know, and too many webinars happening.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's true.
So, Bharat, you have reminded me of my own story, which I would like to share here. It'll take 1 minute.
No, please take your time. I'm okay to stay on for a few more minutes. So if people want to say hello.
I started my career quite early. When I was in grade 11, I had started working. And I had to take salary, which I had not done because I was managing the entire business. So I had not taken salary because I was managing my brother's business. So one fine day, father told me that you need to take salary. So fix the salary. So my brother fixed my salary as 1,200 rupees. And that day in the evening, I was supposed to bring my money, my salary back home. So while going to office, I used to walk from my home to office. There was this market where I saw this lovely Puma sports shoes worth 900 rupees. I negotiated and brought it down to 900 rupees so that I can buy that after I get my salary. And I took my salary. It was evening. I came back home and my father in the dining table asked me, "Did you take your salary?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Where is it?" I took out 1,200 rupee notes and gave it to him. And he said, then he returned 300 rupees back to me saying, "From today, your pocket money has become 10 times, because till then he used to give me 30 rupees per month as pocket money. So he gave me 300 rupees. I was disheartened. I was so sad about that Puma shoe that I had seen. Now I cannot buy. So I was literally angry with my father. After 1.5 years of this happened and this went off, it took me 4 months to buy that shoe, but I still bought that shoe. And after 1.5 years, when I started my own business, and my father came to know that I had taken my garden chairs to the office to open my office, he took out some money and gave it to me saying that this is the money that I had taken from your salary. Take it and, come furnish your office, new office. So this story remains with me as of date, and that was my capital. That was my capital of my entire business journey. So I just wanted to share this with you.
No. So Ranjit,
might have just, yes, sir.
Can I give you a bit of coaching, little bit of coaching, may I, in public?
Please, please, please.
So Ranjit, today is Father's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine you're called on a radio. Mm-hmm. You're not prepared. And somebody were to say, Ranjit, can you share me a story of your father and one lesson you learned from your father? This story would have been fantastic. And the point you would have wanted to make was, there are two lessons that I learned from my father. Sometimes you need to be tough to be kind. And love is not a feeling, but love is doing. Our parents express their love by doing things for us, but by not hugging us. It could be some other points, but imagine how powerful this story is. So everybody would pay a tribute, but you actually share an experience. And this is a memory that will live with people forever. Now that's one part. The other part is, like I said, I've just told you the storytelling, story spotting framework. So you could have probably mentioned the time marker. You said 11th grade. So that could be a year. So that would have helped, because in my mind, I need to figure out, like 11th grade, which year was Ranjit in? No? Which year was that? Okay, then a place marker. I want to know, like, which part of Nepal did you grow up? So there could be somebody in the audience who's probably from your neighborhood. Then you immediately get connected. And you can probably mention where your office was, or that shop where that Puma thing was. So if you give a bit of these details, then your story becomes more interesting to the listener. And you had enough aha moments. You had aha moments that you got the 1,200 rupees, but actually you only got 300. Or when you bought the garden chair, your dad gave you the money, which was a surprise. But you finally end up having a shoe, so there was a delayed gratification. So you have all the elements for a great story, but you just need to, I've just told you the spotting framework, but I'm glad you shared this, because it gives me a chance for the other participants to learn as well. And this is a learning environment. And so just with a little bit of the discipline, you can do this in 90 seconds, and it will be so impactful for the listeners that they'll never forget Ranjit's story. Thank you, Ranjit, for sharing that.
Thank you.
Good. Is Deepak still there?
Yeah. Deepak is here. Deepak is here. He's right here.
Hey, Deepak ji, I saw a nice photograph of you doing yoga. I think you need to give me yoga lessons. You saw his post, Ravin, some fantastic yoga poses on the Facebook.
Oh, great.
And I also, your story about the chapel flower.
Deepak, you need to unmute.
Yeah, that chappal story, I also find very interesting because from kids' mind, we always get a new perspective to look at the things. That was the key message I wanted to highlight.
No, that was a beautiful. So I read it just before we started the webinar today. So Deepak ji is a good storyteller, Ranjit.
I know that. I know that.
Deepak, why don't you share that story for the listeners in the room?
Yeah, share the chapel story. The chapel story.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a real story. Yesterday, at 9 a.m. in the morning, I was walking through nearby my estates with my two daughters. My elder daughter is 11 years old, and then the smaller one is 5 years. So when we were walking, there was a small farm where the small creepers of pumpkins were there, and in the middle, there was one very, I think, the whole unused one slipper, blue colored slipper was hang over a stick in between. And suddenly, the younger daughter, she pointed that object and saying, "Then what is that?" And then I told her about the farmer has placed that unused slipper just to scare the insects or animals so that his farm can be safe. And then suddenly my small daughter, she says, "No, Baba, this is chapel flower," because it was very distinct in that farm. And then it was, I have shared that photo also, and it exactly looks like a kind of flower within the farm. So I find that the small kids, they have a very different perspective to look at the things. And when we grow older, our mindset becomes a kind of falls under a format. So that as Bharat mentioned about that geometric frame, I suggest all the friends in today's session, they are from creative profession. So the more we interact with the little kids, more different insights we get. So I would like to suggest this thing also. Thank you, Ravindra, for giving me time to share this story.
So thanks for the flowery tale.
Fantastic, Deepak ji. Very nice. Ravin, if you are in trouble next time, go and speak to your kids. You'll get inspiration from there. Solutions may come from there, unexpected.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Very true. Very true.
So we should close the meeting now. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bharat. We'll catch up
Thank
once
you, everybody.
again.
Thanks,
soon.
everybody.
Thank
and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.